Hello everyone, I'm Transformers fan called 328 here, and it's not about you do differently, it's about what you do well. It's been well established that I'm a fan of Transformers and Platinum games. But the last thing I expected was a Transformers game made by Platinum Games. It's heavily driven by the old G1 cartoon, has many of the old voice actors reprising their roles. Vince DiColo, the composer of the 86 movie's music, contributes to help make this game's soundtrack, and the gameplay would be the same fast-paced, precision-heavy combat we all know and love the studio for. Will Devastation be another action classic among Metal Gear Rising and Bayonetta that does this license proud? Or will it be another disappointment like the Korra game? Another mediocre game to throw onto the pile of unimpressive Transformers games. Let's see if they threw their lives away so recklessly. The plot is best summed up as Autobots raise their battle to destroy the evil forces of the Decepticons. Well, to be more specific, the plot device in this game is the Proud Star, a Cybertronian vessel that contains Cybertron's lost culture and a means to cyberform planets, which Megatron plans to put to use, and of course, the Autobots must stop him. It's as simple as that, but when you really think about it, most Transformers storylines were very simplistic in the grand scheme of things, like Prime's Relicons and such. What typically makes them stand out are the character arcs and interactions between these guys, especially in the G1 cartoon. And Devastation clearly shows that. The writing is spot on for every character, and the delivery from the returning cast, as well as some of the replacement voices, is pitch perfect from everyone.
My loyalty only goes so far. Tampering with plasma energy? That's madness.
Wow, that took no convincing at all. No wonder they call you Thunder Cracker.
Very funny, Pipsqueak.
Oh yeah, not every character's original voice actors return to their roles. This is understandable for the voice actors that died, but then there's curious omissions like Corey Burton as Shockwave, which could likely be down to busyness or reluctance, and the various roles that Frank Welker played in the Sunbow cartoon that he doesn't reprise in this game. He's front and center in the game's cast as Megatron and Soundwave, but all his other roles are filled by other actors. Honestly, I don't mind, as not one performance feels forced or weak regardless of this choice. It's just that this game was very dedicated to being as close to G1 as possible, with some minor influence from the recent toy line and the IDW comics, that it's strange when it even slightly deviates from exactly as it was. It's a nitpick either way, and I feel that while the game's story isn't special, although it does make a good jumping off point for future storylines, the writing and characters make it all worth it.
You say the war will end, and my friends will be safe. That is all I could ever ask.
The game looks great. The cel-shaded look helps to recreate the style of the G1 cartoon as best as possible, and every character is well rendered and well animated. The sound design is good as usual for Platinum Games, but the music... oh my god, it's so great to have another kick-ass Platinum Games soundtrack again! After the not bad, but disappointingly forgettable soundtrack to the Korra game, I was hoping that this game's music would be great to make up for it. Thank Primus that Vince DiColo and the other composers brought their A-game, as these are some awesome tunes. They suit every fight, pump you up for the awesome battle about to take place, have multiple varieties for almost every encounter in the game, and are great to listen to while working on other projects. My personal favorites are the Soundwave, Shockwave, Menasor, and Blitzwing boss themes, but all of them are no less than great. The end credits theme in particular really captures the essence of why G1 is so beloved among many fans. But strangely, it's only got 20 seconds worth of lyrics.
Transformers, face the devastation. Decepticons rage, war of wars, till all are one. The Autobots will fight to save us all from devastation.
And that's it. I've never heard a song so devoid of lyrics since Inspector Gadget! Nevertheless, the entire soundtrack gets a wholehearted thumbs up. Now onto the gameplay. The game controls similarly to the Korra game, but with a few Transformers-related key differences. First, unlike most Platinum games, you can pick between 5 different classic Autobots. The balanced Optimus Prime, the lightning-fast Bumblebee, the hit-and-run Sideswipe, the ranged Turtle Wheeljack, and the always badass Hulk of the Autobots, Grimlock. Every one of them, aside from having significantly different gameplay feels, also have defining abilities and distinct attacks. The same function that allows Optimus to run his enemies over with his trailer allows Sideswipe to flash forward for quick getaways, allows Bumblebee to slip under his opponent's legs for a quick backstrike, gives Wheeljack a shield, and lets Grimlock grab his opponent and SummerSlam that bastard hard, which also works on bosses. They also have distinct ultimate attacks, which activate like Raiden's Ripper mode but aren't anything like that. They're one-off attacks that deal a lot of damage, and that's it. I like this as a nice way to close a fight, clear an assortment of enemies, or do a quick chunk of damage to a boss. All the characters are fun to play as, and which one you'll gravitate to depends on your preference for their characters and or their gameplay styles. I found Sideswipe's hit-and-run tactics and Grimlock's slow but strong strikes to be right up my alley, but I greatly enjoyed playing as all of them regardless. None of them are bad. Of course, they also transform, with the R1 button, unlike the L3 button of the Cybertron games. I admit it's not as intuitive as those games, but it's easy to get used to, and despite it being mapped to the same button as the dodge function, this works to its advantage, expertly implementing the name of the license into the fast and flowing combat. And don't worry, Grimlock's Dino Mode isn't a glorified car, to the point where you can spend most of Grimlock's game time in Dino Mode if you wish. I also appreciate the slow time focus mechanic that gives an edge to skilled evasion. The game also gives you firearms like Revengeance, and they're much more interesting here than in that game. Being able to be comboed into and from makes for more interesting, flashy, and unique combat that I approve of. Every character can also become stronger in multiple different ways. They all have stats that level up independently of each other during gameplay, and they can be given experience by spending in-game credits. I also noticed that whatever characters you aren't using still get some experience in these stats, so that switching to a less used character doesn't feel like playing catch-up. You can also use those to buy healing items and extra chances, synthesize various ranged and melee weapons that homage several incarnations of the franchise, all of them individually rendered to boot, and forge tech chips that give a new skill or stat buff randomly when you time your button press in the timing QTE. All of these enhancements take a while to mean something, but they do mean something in the end, trust me. All of this adds up into kick-ass gameplay that's fun, unique, and truly satisfying while staying true to the franchise. My favorite part of the game is, without question, the boss fights. These are some of the best and most intense bosses I've ever faced in a licensed game. All of them are memorable, well-crafted, and a joyous challenge from beginning to end. From the Super Armor Blitzwing literally tanking your hits to Shockwave's Shadow Clone Jutsu and reflective laser beams, and Motormaster's Electric Sword on loan from the top-down Zelda games. The battles against the combiners of the game, Devastator and Menasor, are their own highlights. I also like the collectibles the game has for you to find, like Kremzeeks, Decepticon flags, Spy Ops, and Mystery Letters. Though it sucks that they only unlock artwork and a couple trophies. I do admit that it's oddly pleasant to hear a Kremzeek say its name like a Pokemon while you're trying to collect it. This does lead into my issues with the game, starting with the enemy variety and bosses. The enemy variety is not as bad as the core game, but it's still somewhat lacking in variety. Sure, there's more unique enemy types with the large and giant ground soldiers, dual-bladed seekers, and 4 different varieties of Insecticon enemies, and all of them have different strategies they take into combat, but the same small ground soldiers and conehead seekers you fought in Chapter 1 are the same type you'll be beating up on in the final chapter. And the chapter before that. In fact, they stop introducing new enemy varieties after Chapter 4, where the dual-bladed Seekers come into play. And while the game's bosses both outnumber and out-awesome Korras, they have a habit of being reused. Not as frequently as Korras were, but still notable. I think some of us could have clued on to this fact when we fought Megatron and Devastator twice in the first friggin' chapter alone, but upon further inspection, Shockwave and Skywarp are the only bosses that aren't reused at least once in the main campaign. And Skywarp's a reskin of Starscream anyways. Some could argue that this isn't that big an issue, as I enjoyed fighting them, so it's alright that I get to fight them again. But these rematches feel tacked on, and to some degree, like lazy asset reuse, despite the presence in the plot to support this. And the getting stronger angle doesn't really work, since you're not really growing significantly between Chapter 3 and 5, where both Starscream and Blitzwing are fought back to back. I didn't like it much when Revengeance just threw 2 bosses I'd fought before in a later chapter either. Even the final boss fight is just Megatron Round 4. Don't get me wrong, it's still an epic boss fight with the atmosphere of outer space and the climactic clash between Optimus and Megatron cemented with epic dialogue and spectacular music. I won't argue that it was done very well and was a good way to end the game, but the oh my god factor is ruined when you consider that this is the same boss we fought 3 times already, one of which wasn't even a goddamn minute ago! Mashing the circle button doesn't constitute a new boss fight, guys! I was half expecting some stronger Transformer to show up and steal the spotlight, specifically Nova Prime considering all the build-up they've given him throughout the game's cutscenes, but he gets relegated to Marvel Cinematic Universe Thanos duty instead. Oh well. And unlike Platinum Games' other titles, the environments are reused a little too often. The city and the Proud Star are all you get, and while the city is huge and encourages exploration like a Metroidvania, it lacks any real landmarks that help make exploring it more memorable and easier. Or rather, the only memorable parts of the city are stretched too thin across the map. Without this minimap, you'd likely be lost more often than not. I've played the campaign multiple times over and I've yet to memorize the layout of this damn maze of a city. And while the city's connection to the Proud Star does help it feel like a part of the same world, the Proud Star itself is as linear as you can get, save for the rare forks on the road exclusively there for hidden collectibles. I'm also not a fan of the 200 weapon inventory limit, but at least it helps keep your wallet nice and meaty, and you'll probably never use half the weapons you'll get, even for synthesis, so I get why it's there. However, despite these issues, and an overall running time of about 6 hours in the story mode, I'm not going to complain about the price. I admit that I was about to, but then I remember that I've given praise to games with similar length and have yet to let the price tag ruin the title for me. I gave Sonic and the Black Knight a glowing review despite its short running time and $50 asking price at launch, and Revengeance is one of my all-time favorites. Hell, I haven't paid full price for any of these titles, Devastation included, and I don't let the expense bog the game down because once I do have it, the fun I had with each title outweighed the asking price I paid. Devastation adds to that value with a fantastic challenge mode. While a lot of it is wave after wave of the same enemies as in the story mode, challenge mode sometimes asks you to fight certain bosses together, like Megatron with Shockwave, Megatron with Starscream, Soundwave with Shockwave, the 3 original Seekers at once, Megatron with Optimus, and all of them are a nice fun challenge that surprisingly makes the otherwise unrelated boss fights complementary of each other. These are the kinds of fights I always wanted to play, and they delivered in spades. It was also fun fighting the clone Autobots, punting Decepticons for points, and gunning down Insecticons like a game of Galaga. You're also rewarded with in-game credits and weapons that you can carry into the game's story mode. Challenge mode is so entertaining that I find it hard to pull myself away from it and play the story mode for other unlockables like trophies and difficulties. However, I feel that challenge mode does not make the game worth $50, nor do the DLC skins featuring Nemesis Prime, Goldfire, and Red Alert, which will run you another $5. In short, I highly recommend this game, but only at a significant discount. I have little doubt that this game will go down in price completely, and when it does, you'll have a great time. It has great graphics, entertaining writing, solid mechanics, a kick-ass soundtrack, a ton of awesome weapons, 5 distinct, useful, and fun-to-control characters, multiple different bosses that are all a blast to fight, and a satisfying series of side missions once the game's plot is over. I just wish there were more areas in the game. They could have cut down on the reuse of bosses in the story mode, and maybe include 1 or 2 more unique enemy types, but certainly a step up from the core game. I'd love to see a follow-up game and how Platinum can up the ante from all the well-done aspects this game has, but for what we got, I've sunk several hours into this game, and I hold no regrets. I'm Transformers Fanco328, and it's actually kind of cool how you can have all of the playable characters in this game in Masterpiece form. Too bad they'll cost more than the game. Each.
Fools! Not only am I intelligent, I am
Fucking invincible!